listen, Brad, I don't need to tell you this, but I want to make sure our viewers know you are the security contractor that's making these allegations against the Hillary Clinton State Department. They are bombshell allegations if they can be proven. Walk us through this from the very beginning. So your security team, your security company, you guys weren't originally the ones who were contracted to provide security at the diplomatic compound. When were you brought into this?
Well, we bid on it, but we didn't get it. There was a small company called Blue Mountain UK that, none of us had ever really heard of. Torres is a pretty large company. We supply armed security, unarmed security to a lot of different missions around the world. So, we know what we're doing when it comes to this. We had bid on it. We were the sole bidder on it the first go round, and the State Department bureaucrats kicked it back and said, we got to get at least one other company to bid on it. And so Blue Mountain came in. They beat us by 4 percentage points. And so it was only a 1-year contract. It wasn't that valuable, but we wanted to get it. So fast forward 6 months, about 12 days before the attacks, our director of operations was at another meeting at the State Department and meeting with some of the contracting folks. We had won Pakistan's embassy and we were standing it up. He got pulled out of that meeting by Jan Vicentainer, who is the contracting officer in charge of the contract for Benghazi, and asked could we perform in Benghazi. We had a pretty good plan in place, and so they called me and we got the team activated and ready to move, and we started pinging them every day, should we go, should we go? They have to give us what's called a notice to proceed before we can do anything. So before they would issue that notice to proceed, unfortunately, Ambassador Stevens, Smith, as well as Doherty and Ty Woods were killed.
Right, and this was just, you had this conversation with the State Department, just to clarify, a matter of days. It wasn't even a full 2 weeks before this attack happened. What caused the State Department? Did they give you any indication about why they were letting go Blue Mountain UK and why they were then hiring you?
Not at the time, but, we have a lot of contacts on the ground, so we knew that things weren't going well. We knew that there had been a deteriorating relationship between the local partner, which was Blue Mountain Libya, and Blue Mountain UK. So we kind of expected something to come out of it, but they were about 6 months into it, so we figured they would just see it to the end and we'd get another bite at the apple. But I was surprised when they asked us to come in, but not surprised given the security situation on the ground, the way it had deteriorated the second half of 2011.
Right, and speak to me about that. So when you talk about the security situation deteriorating, this was not something that falls in line with the State Department talking point or narrative that it was a spontaneous protest. Everyone over there, if I'm not mistaken, was aware that there was a threat of Islamic terror, that there was an influx of Islamic terrorists that had come into the region. They must have known this at the time that they hired Blue Mountain UK, who, by the way, weren't even fully armed. They didn't even have the weapons to actually defend this compound. That part makes no sense to me.
Well, you're right. As a matter of fact, you don't have to take, I was on the ground there during the war. We were there right after the fall of Tripoli, kind of what we say in the military, leaning forward in the foxhole. We provide a lot of services for DOD and DOS, Department of Defense, Department of State. And so we were there working even, before this tender had come out, and me and my team was on the ground. So what was interesting about this bid was, and we'll get back to the security situation very quickly, but what was curious about this bid was it was let as unarmed. Now, our technical proposal, we were going to rent a compound half a kilometer away. We don't go in unarmed. The guards on the gate might have been unarmed while they were there, but we would have had an armed quick reaction force of about 20 guys, expatriates there on the ground that we had trained. Libyans, expatriates that were from UK, United States, and Europe, working with the 6-man special forces team that we send in, led by me.
Right.
So we would have been.
The idea of anybody being unarmed in that situation is absolutely insane. We saw video footage. We saw this attack. The idea that mobs of radical jihadists could be defended against by people without weapons, that's utterly ridiculous. If people at the State Department truly thought that was adequate defense, and they are more than incompetent at what they do. But fast forward a little bit. So after the attack, you had been told, a couple days beforehand, or you had gotten that contract, then the attack happened. What happened then? How did the State Department contact you next?
Well, I want to say one thing about the situation so that your listeners or your viewers are clear. The situation, you don't have to take our word for it. Look at the over 400. We know now because of Judicial Watch, thank God for them, and also WikiLeaks that gave the classified cables that just 6 weeks before this attack, Ambassador Stevens himself wrote a classified cable and said that this compound could not withstand a coordinated attack. Also, the RSO, the Regional Security Officer, had made over 400 requests in the course of a year. That's more than one a day for additional security and additional resources, which were ignored by the contracting officers in Roslyn, Virginia, safe in their cubicles in Roslyn, Virginia. Now, fast forward after the attacks, everything kind of went dead. About a few months after the attacks, Jerry Torres, who's a retired Green Beret who founded Torres AES, was called back. These contracting officers from time to time will have us come back, and there's issues we have to discuss. So it's not unusual to be called back. It's unusual to be called back and not be told why, which is what's interesting about this. So he came back. I think we're in Zambia in Southern Africa on another contract, and he flew back to meet with these guys. And it was weird. He said the meeting was just a few folks standing around, nothing important enough to call a CEO back from overseas. But it was after the meeting it became clear what it was really about. On the way back out, just before you get to the security turnstiles there at the State Department's building in Roslyn, Vicentainer pulls Jerry Torres aside and says, as a paraphrase, hey, Jerry, really need you to be in lockstep with us on this Benghazi thing. And, oh, by the way, don't talk to the media, don't cooperate with anyone looking into this if you don't have to. And if you have to, go ahead and agree with us that this should have been unarmed. Now, Jerry, you've been winning a lot of contracts with us and doing good business with us, and we'd like to keep it that way. So just be a team player with us. That's how the conversation went. And anyone who knows anything, that was very much an implied threat, and these people will retaliate. And I'm new to the term deep state, but now I've actually put two and two together. These are the bureaucrats that get away with it. These are the guys that never held accountable for any of their decisions. They implement the bad policies that the bad policymakers put in place. And then at the end of the day, you can make mistakes and be negligent up to and including getting people killed, and you don't get fired. As a matter of fact, Jan Vicentainer and Sharon James, the two contracting officers that are most responsible for this opportunity of the terrorists to attack and kill our people, are still in the same division at State Department. One has been promoted and the other is the division chief. So they are still in the same positions, making choices over security contracts for the State Department, and nothing has changed, if you can believe it.
It's absolutely chilling to hear that. I mean, they literally threatened a private citizen and said, if you don't parrot the government talking points on this issue, even though it's counter to the truth, and they knew it was counter to the truth, then you will suffer the repercussions. And you did. If I'm not mistaken, your contracting company lost many, many bids, a majority of the bids that you otherwise would have obtained if before this situation. Brad, we're just about out of time, but I do want to ask one question here. Why'd you wait till now to speak out? What prompted you to speak up?
Well, the major reason is because we have a change of administration. We didn't believe that if Hillary Clinton, Secretary Clinton, had been elected, that this issue would have been properly vetted. So now we have a new administration. We've carried around a lot of guilt over this because that could have been me. This is the type of work that both of us have done for many years. It could have been me. I could have been one of those four. And that's the thing. We must remember there is a human side to this. Those were people whose lives had substance, and no justice for Benghazi has been had. So what we're hoping is that folks will contact their congressmen and senators and ask them to revisit the laws that have made this possible, and also to hold the State Department folks accountable. And not just the top dogs who are the policymakers, but the middle management folks who really made some of the poor decisions and then participated in the cover-up.
Right, and those people are still at the State Department. That's the appalling part. They not only are in their positions, they got promoted. They're still there. The procedures haven't changed. If they haven't changed, how would we know? How do we have any confidence that something like this wouldn't happen again? Just because the administration is different, the people who are making those minute-to-minute decisions, they're the same. 5 years later, we still don't have answers to these questions. We still don't have accountability. Get off our streets! Nazis, get off our streets!
Recent reports reveal money ties between Hillary Clinton and the radical left extremist group Antifa, who are undermining the foundations of US governance with violence and intimidation, attempting to suppress free speech across the country. Last week, Berkeley police arrested an Antifa member who had met with Hillary Clinton ahead of the violent rally at UC Berkeley. The radical left demonstrators sought to prevent or disrupt the speech of conservative commentator Ben Shapiro on campus. Amongst other left-wing extremists, the police arrested 44-year-old Sarah Rourke of San Francisco for the possession of a deadly weapon. Rourke had expressed her intent to protest Shapiro's speech on Facebook hours before her arrest. The incident occurred after her meeting with Hillary Clinton, who is reportedly using her dark money PAC Onward Together for the purposes of funding radical left groups. to spread discord within the American society.
Democrats, I've got a new organization called Onward Together. I'm supporting young grassroots groups that have sprung up to recruit candidates, train them, run them, fund them.
Ahead of the event at Berkeley, Ben Shapiro noted that free speech isn't free, as authorities had estimated security costs at roughly $600,000 due to the anticipated left-wing violence. However, Hillary Clinton topped these costs by funneling up to $800,000 to far-left extremist groups through Onward Together. Clinton's PAC is asking for donations, including monthly subscription payments, but it does not disclose the identity of its donors, citing the law that does not require such disclosures from social welfare organizations, which Onward Together officially is.
So the question now becomes, is Hillary Clinton the leader of Antifa, right? We all thought it was George Soros in the past, but now has Hillary Clinton risen to take upon that mantle, to take on that role, because she couldn't win the presidency?
In actuality, the means of social welfare perpetrated by funding from Onward Together really went towards things like bricks, hammers, bats and chains used by Antifa to intimidate the political opponents of the radical left cause. Lack of transparency makes Onward Together essentially a dark money pack, and the revealed ties between Hillary Clinton and Antifa leave little doubt of where the money goes. Far-left extremist groups such as Antifa thus serve as a tool for the suit-and-tie radicals like Hillary Clinton and her affiliates, who seek to use political terror to expand their influence. Ultimately, Onward Together promotes the ideology